Today, I'm going to talk about a very important symbiotic relationship that is seen around us. This is a symbiotic relationship which starts at the birth of a person and continues until after his death. Do you know what it is? Yes, I am talking about those microorganisms that is present inside the human body, which are called normal flora of human body. So let us see what are these microorganisms and where are they present in the body and what is their significance. Okay, let us see some of the definitions that we need to know when we talk about normal microflora. See, these are organisms that engage in symbiotic or commensal associations with humans. Now, whenever we say normal microflora, there are many other terms which are used synonymously. What are they? You can call it as resident flora, you can call it as indigenous flora or microflora or microbiota or sometimes even commensals. Now you must be knowing the term commensal in the sense, see, symbiotic relationship is a relationship where both the organisms get some form of benefit. Here the organisms, what we mean is, one is human being, the other one is the microorganism that is present in the human body, right? But sometimes only one organism gets the benefit, whereas the other neither gets the benefit nor gets harmed. So there are certain microorganisms in our body that get some benefit from us, but they don't give anything back to us. So such microorganisms are also there in the body. So such a relationship is called commensal relationship. So both symbiotic microorganism and commensal microorganisms are present in the human body. Now these microbes have colonized the body right from the birth. When we keep growing from the environment, we keep on getting these microorganisms which colonize our body. And when we say they have colonized our body, they remain only in the outer surfaces. Outer surfaces in the sense, both skin and mucus layers that is present in the body. They usually do not penetrate inside. They usually are not present in any tissues or fluids present deep within the body. So the tissues and fluids present in the body are usually sterile. Only if there is an infection or a disease, you find the organism in the blood or in other tissues. In other cases, in healthy, normal individual, the tissues and fluids are sterile. But when the host defenses get decreased, immune system gets affected, the microorganism might enter inside these sterile tissues or fluids. They might start growing there, multiply there, and in that case we call this as an infection. And the microbe can be called as an infectious agent or pathogen. Now, even in the pathogens, we have two types. We will be seeing that later. So, let us just see certain types. Now, after the infection, if you see some form of symptoms in the body, if you see some form of damage or disruption to tissues or organs in the body, then it is considered as an infectious disease. So, slowly we have to know a lot of terms that is used in medical microbiology, and I am introducing you to such terms. Now, what are the various groups of microorganisms that is present in the body? We know there are 5 major groups. Are all they present? No. 4 major groups are there. The most dominant group is bacteria. Then comes fungi, and then viruses are there. Some protozoans are also there, especially in the intestine. So 4 major groups of microorganisms are present in the body. Now, as I said, the most dominant group is bacteria, and the most recent estimate says that there are approximately 50 trillion cells present, 50 trillion bacterial cells that is present in our body, in one person's body. In fact, this is as many as human cells in our body. That is 1:1 ರೇಷಿಯೋದಲ್ಲಿ 2 ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. In fact, this is a very latest report. Before that, they used to say the number of bacterial cells was 10 times more than the number of human cells. Bacterial cells ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇದೆ human cells ಇಂದ ಅಂತನೂ reports ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿತ್ತು. But recent reports ಅಲ್ಲಿ they say that it is the number of bacterial cells is equal to the number of human cells that is present. But if you take the genetic material, you know, genetic material is the controlling element of any cell, right? If any organism, genetic material is the controlling element. So if you take the genetic material and observe and do the estimation, what they say is there are 600,000 microbial genes. And this is 25 times more than the number of human genes. So controlling element is more of bacterial cells than the human cells. So I have told this even in the class. Now we have to really question ourselves whether the bacteria is controlling us or whether we are controlling bacteria. Fine. We will see it later, one by one. Now we will see how these bacteria are distributed in the human body in different areas. Okay, what is the significance of the normal microflora that is present in the human body? Why should we study about them? What role do they play? There are many roles. The first one is they inhibit the colonization and invasion of the body by pathogens. That is, when the normal microflora is present in one particular area, that area cannot be attacked by a pathogen that is coming from an external environment. They are already there. Normal microorganisms are already there. They have occupied the space. So the external pathogens cannot come and sit on the same place. So this is one important beneficial effect that we have. They inhibit the colonization of the pathogens. So we don't get a particular disease. The second important significance is some of these microorganisms, especially the microbes that is present in the intestinal region, they produce certain vitamins like vitamin K and vitamin B. So this is supplied to the human beings. And the third important significance here is because of these microorganisms, our immune system gets activated time and again. See, whatever it is, whether they are right from our birth, still they are foreign substances. So any foreign substance, when the immune system comes across, they will get alert, they will start producing antibodies. So these microorganisms, they are present there, they will keep on continuously inducing the immune system so that there will be some amount of antibodies that will always be present in our body to fight against different types of diseases. Then these are positive effects. Sometimes they also have some negative effects. What is that? Sometimes these normal microflora can become pathogenic when the body's immune system becomes weak. As long as your body's immune system is strong, you won't get any disease from the normal microflora. But when your immune system gets decreased by some means, the normal microflora itself will become pathogen. They will start attacking your own body and they will cause infection. So such microorganisms are called opportunistic pathogens. You will come across this when you study about HIV virus. HIV attacks the immune system, and because of that many other infections we start getting. And these infections are mainly caused by the normal microflora. Fine. Now, another negative effect what you see is sometimes they interfere in diagnosis due to the resemblance to some pathogens. That means, see, for example, a patient goes with diarrheal symptoms. So the clinical sample that will be taken for this is stool sample. Fecal material irutte alva. They take that and they will examine it. But examine ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿರುವ ಈ ಕೊಲೈನು ಗ್ರಾಮ್ ನೆಗೆಟಿವ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, Salmonella will also be gram-negative in nature. So both of them will almost show similar characters. So there will always be confusion during diagnosis. Of course, we have many systems now to avoid this confusion, but initial identification, preliminary characterization becomes difficult here. So diagnosis ಅಲ್ಲಿ interfere ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ ಯಾವುದು normal microflora. Fine. So these are the significance of normal microflora that is present in our human body. So what are the areas that is normally colonized by these microorganisms? First is skin and its mucous membranes. Next is upper respiratory tract, including nose, trachea, and even lungs. Next is gastrointestinal tract, your stomach, large intestine, small intestine areas, and then outer opening of urethra, that is we call it as urinary tract, right? So that one, external genitalia. These are genital tracts, vagina and external genitalia, and then even the external ear and canal and external eye. So you can see that the skin, gastrointestinal tract, genitourinary tract, and ear, eyes, not all parts of eyes, the lids and follicles, lashes. So eyelashes and eyelids, these areas are usually colonized by different types of microorganisms without doing any harm. So this is the same thing in the pictorial form. As I said, different microbes are present in all these regions, right from eyes to ears, and then the upper respiratory tract, and then the mouth. Then comes the stomach. Even in stomach, they are present. Then in your small intestine, in your large intestine, in the urethral region, vaginal region, and also in the skin. In all these areas, you find different groups of microorganisms. Let us start with the outermost layer, that is skin, the microflora of skin. Now, before we talk about the different types of microbes present in the skin surface, let us first understand the different skin layers. So for that, you have to see this cross section of the skin tissue. Now, the outermost layer is the epidermal layer, epidermis, where you find the dead cells present on top, which will keep on getting removed, and under that you will find the healthy skin layer. Now there will be a waxy coating on this layer where the microbes can come and bind and start colonizing, and beneath this epidermal layer you find the dermal layer, dermis, and here you will find hair follicles and also different types of glands like sebaceous gland where you get sebum produced, and also sweat gland where sweat will be produced and secreted outside, and beneath this you find the subcutaneous tissue. Now microbes are mainly present in this layer, that is epidermal layer, and also they are present in hair follicles and glands. Now what is very peculiar here is skin is a very good defense against the colonization of microorganism. One thing, the dead layer will keep on getting removed, so microbes that is present adhered to that region will be removed along with this dead tissue. Second is because of the sweat production and secretion, the sodium chloride concentration will be very high on the surface, so most of the microorganisms that are not salt tolerant cannot grow here, and many other antimicrobial products are also there in this layer. From the sweat we get, like lysozyme, a very important antibacterial substance that is present in the sweat, so that also will be present here. So skin almost makes its surface inhospitable for the growth of microbes. Still some microbes overcome all these difficulties and they grow and they colonize, present as normal microflora. It has been estimated that the skin supports about 10 to the power of 12 bacteria on its surface. Now, if you study this bacterial flora, You can classify them under two categories. One is called transient microflora, the other one is called the resident microflora. What is the difference between these two? See, transient microflora are those microorganisms which come into contact with the skin surface by some person or by some activity. And they will be just present there temporarily. They will not grow on the skin. They will not colonize the skin surface. They are not permanent organisms present on the skin. Because of some hygienic conditions, because of some activity that you carry out, or because of touching somebody who is having a specific type of bacteria, you get that bacteria on your skin. But once you wash your skin, once you take bath, then that microflora will not be present. Even if you don't wash your skin, just by the removal of dead skin tissue, the organism will be removed from the body. So such microorganisms are called transient microflora. They are temporary. Whereas the resident microflora is a permanent microflora present on the surface of a human. They live there, they multiply in deeper layers of the epidermis, and also they grow in the glands and follicles. And this resident flora is usually very stable. You can always isolate them from a person. They'll be there throughout his lifetime, and they are less influenced by the hygiene. Even if you wash your hands, they will not go. They will be there. So that is what we call a resident microflora. So these are some of the common microflora present on the surface of the skin. We have gram-positive bacteria, gram-negative bacteria, even some organisms like mycobacteria, acid-fast organisms are also seen. Among gram-positive ones, the most common bacteria that you will find is Staphylococci, Streptococci, Corynebacteria, and Propionibacteria. Whereas among gram-negative ones, we find E. coli, Proteus, and Acinetobacter. Whereas mycobacteria, smegmatis is present. Don't get confused this organism with tuberculosis causing organism. That is a different species, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, whereas this is Mycobacterium smegmatis. And this is especially present in external genitalia, that is genital surface ಇದೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ, genital tract surface ಇದೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ, outermost surface, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಈ organism ನ isolate ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. Throughout the skin ಇರಲ್ಲ ಇದು. Among fungi, the most common ones are Candida species and Cryptococci. And among these bacteria and fungi, some of them are opportunistic pathogen. As I said, some are commensal organisms. They will not cause any harm to human beings. And some of them are even helpful to human beings, whereas there are certain organisms which are opportunistic pathogens. When the immune system gets diminished, they can cause the infection. So among that, the most common ones are hemolytic streptococci and staphylococci. This particular species, not all streptococci and staphylococci are opportunistic pathogens. Second is, this is a very important organism that you must remember, Candida albicans. This is a very common skin pathogen, opportunistic pathogen, and this is observed even in HIV patients, right? Now the third one, the name itself suggests what it does, Propionibacterium acnes. Acne ಅಂತ ಬರುತ್ತೆಲ್ಲ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮುಖದ ಮೇಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪಿಂಪಲ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಏನು ಕರಿತೀರಾ, ಪಿಂಪಲ್ಸ್ along with red inflammation rashes ನಿಮಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆಲ್ಲ, that is called acne, and that is caused by this particular bacterium, Propionibacterium acnes. The next region is oral cavity. What are the microbes present in this region? Let us see. If you see the structure of the oral cavity, I am not going to say all the parts present here. The parts that are important to us, I will just mention them. One is the gingiva, or what you call gums, which is present above the teeth, which holds the teeth together. So that region is called gingiva. And then you have the teeth enamel. This is again another place where microbes can live. And then you have the lips, and then the cheek epithelium. Cheek epithelium antandre ee cheek olagade region ideyalla, that tissue, mucus layer, that is cheek epithelium. And you have the palate region here. Teeth hinde iruttella, soft palate, hard palate anta heltivi, the palate region here. And then the tongue, infection can happen. Microbes are there in that region. And the floor of the mouth, floor of the mouth andre tongue kelagade. Below the tongue you have this hard region, right? That is floor of the mouth. So in all these regions, different microbes are present. In fact, one estimate says that 500 species of bacteria reside in this region. Imagine a mouth, a place like this, which is very dynamic. You keep on getting saliva, and saliva has a lot of antibacterial substances in it, and it keeps chewing the food and engulf it. So every time it engulfs, whatever microbes present there loosely will go inside. They will not stay back there in the oral cavity. So in spite of all this, microbes live there, colonize there, multiply there, and do a lot of activities. So let us see what are those. Okay, now see, during birth and for a few years, the kid will not have teeth. So the entire environment is different there. You will find both aerobes and obligate anaerobes growing in that region. So the initial microbiota will be mainly of the genera Streptococcus, Neisseria, Actinomyces, Veillonella, and even Lactobacillus. These organisms, lactobacillus, all these mainly because of the diet consumption, nature of diet that is given during the early years. Okay, and once the teeth starts coming out, slowly anaerobic environment becomes more. Why? Because teeth ಮತ್ತೆ gums ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವ region ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, that becomes totally anaerobic in nature. So instead of aerobes, anaerobes will start dominating in that region. So mainly you will find anaerobes like Porphyromonas, Prevotella, and Fusobacterium, right? And as the teeth keeps growing, many teeth coming out, as the diet starts changing, and as the hygienic practices starts changing, slowly the microbial genera also starts changing. And most common ones will be Streptococcus parasanguis, Streptococcus mutans, which are present attached to the enamel surfaces. Teeth mele enamel ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ organism ಇದನ್ನು ಮರಿಬೇಡಿ. This is a very common organism, Streptococcus mutans, present on the enamel surfaces. And Streptococcus salivarius attaches to the buccal cavity and even the gingival epithelial surface. Gums ಮೇಲೆ ಹೋಗಿ colonize ಮಾಡಿರುತ್ತೆ, even colonizes the saliva. So they will be there. Of course, they will keep on getting washed out because of our chewing activity, because of the engulfment of saliva. They will keep on getting washed out. But what happens is, because of our unhealthy hygiene, for example, sariyagi brush ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ, ಇಲ್ಲ ರಾತ್ರಿ ಹೋಗಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಹೆವಿ ಫುಡ್ ತಿಂದು ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಮೌತ್ ವಾಶ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಟೂ ಮಚ್ ಆಫ್ ಶುಗರಿ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಕನ್ಸಂಪ್ಷನ್, ಈ ರೀಸನ್ ಇಂದ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಮೋರ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಮೋರ್ ಫುಡ್ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಕಲ್ಸ್ stay back in the teeth, stay back in the gum region. And so again, because of the anaerobic environment and because of the well supply of all these nutrients, organisms will start growing luxuriously in that region. That will result in problems like dental plaque, dental caries, gingivitis, and periodontal diseases. So all these problems will come by the same population which is present always in the teeth. As long as you control them, as long as you limit their numbers in the teeth, no problem. But if you let them grow in very high numbers, that is when you see all these problems coming out. The next important region where we see a very large and diverse group of microorganisms is gastrointestinal tract. When I say gastrointestinal tract, it comprises three important parts. One is the stomach, the second one is the small intestine, and the third one is the large intestine. Let us see what are the microorganisms present in this region. Okay, I have divided the type of microbes present in the gastrointestinal tract into three important classes based on the region where they are present in the intestine. So the first region is the stomach. Stomach, as you all know, is highly acidic in nature. The pH will be around 2 to 3 because of the HCl present. But in spite of such an unfavorable environment, very few microorganisms have been isolated from the stomach. For example, Helicobacter pylori. This is very recently found to be an important pathogen in the human body. We will study about it in detail in the future classes, of course. And along with Helicobacter pylori, you also have Streptococcus, you have Staphylococcus, Lactobacillus, Peptostreptococcus, and yeast. Of course, they are present in very few numbers. Uh, that is, they usually come inside the stomach from the food that has been ingested, and they will not stay in the stomach for a long period of time. Depending on the pH of the food, depending on the water consumption, the survival rate of these organisms will vary. But as I said, the most important one is this, which can withstand the acidic pH and which can cause some diseases, which is dangerous. Fine. Now the second important group is present in the small intestine. Again, small intestine can be divided into duodenum and ileum. Duodenum, again, because of the stomach acidity, here also the acidic pH will continue, since it is a continuation of a stomach. And along with acidic pH, it also will have bile juices mixed with it. Because of these two antimicrobial property, duodenum will have very few microorganisms, whereas ileum, if you go there, the pH will slowly start becoming alkaline. So you will start seeing different types of anaerobic gram negative bacteria here, and the number will be around 10 to the power of 8 to 10 to the power of 10 bacteria per gram of ileum contents. And again, here the type of organisms that is commonly seen on Lactobacilli, Enterococci, and fecal flora. Fecal flora in the sense Enterobacteriaceae members like E. coli can be present in the ileal region. Fine. Now, when we talk about large intestine, again, we have two important regions here, cecum and colon. I will talk about colon because this is the region where major number of bacteria have been isolated and studied. They say almost 400 species have been isolated and studied till now. Still much more are there. We have to study them. And the number usually is around 10 to the power of 11 to 10 to the power of 13 bacteria per gram of colon contents. And the most common class of bacteria that is present here are anaerobic or facultatively anaerobic gram negative bacteria. Both types are there, anaerobic strict anaerobes and facultative anaerobes. Gram negative bacteria are seen. Along with that, gram positive spore forming anaerobic bacteria are seen, and non-spore forming rods are also seen. So this is again about the different microflora present in the colon region. As I said, this contains the major number of bacteria. So let us just again see the colon bacteria here. Three important classes will be seen: anaerobes, aerobes or facultatively anaerobes, and also some other groups. So among the anaerobes, the most common ones are Lactobacilli, anaerobic Streptococci, Clostridia, and bacteroids. Very important group they are. They are present in very high numbers in the colon region, whereas facultative anaerobes include Enterococci, coliforms, including E. coli, Proteus, Pseudomonas, and sometimes aerobic Lactobacilli. And others are, you can see very clearly here, others in the sense, apart from bacteria, even fungi like Candida albicans, protozoans like Trichomonas hominis and Entamoeba, and Endolimax, and also viruses are present in this region. Some viruses are also observed in this region. Fine. So this is about the different diverse groups of microorganisms present in the colon region. Now, have we studied, have we isolated all the microorganisms present in the colon region? In fact, what scientists say is only 30% of the microorganism that is present in the colon region have been studied in detail, whereas the remaining 70% is still present, unstudied, unrevealed. Only the tip of the iceberg has been studied. Most of the other microorganisms are yet to be studied. The reason? Mainly because they are not culturable. That means with your ordinary culture media, you cannot isolate them. You cannot cultivate them in the laboratory, make them grow, and then study them. This is not possible with most of the microorganisms. They are called viable, non-culturable microorganisms. So how are we going to study? There is a type of a technique available with us to study such non-culturable microorganism, that is called metagenomic studies. With these studies, we can go for studying these microorganisms which are yet to be revealed in the colon region. So what we have seen till now is about the microflora present in the skin, in the oral cavity, and in the gastrointestinal tract. There are still many other regions which we have to study and get familiarized with. So let us see that in the next presentation.